Evening. My name is Calvin Anderson from the Student Empowerment Program. We're here at the 26th Annual National Association African American Honors Program Conference.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
What's your name?
My name is Daniel Edwards Jr. I'm a freshman, business administration major, international studies minor from Dallas, Texas.
That's fantastic. This is the 26th annual.
Correct.
And they have a portion of it dedicated to social justice. Can you tell me a bit of a description about the program?
Well, the program itself, as it relates to social justice, was mainly trying to get black young intellectuals to relate their college experiences and their own paradigms to various amount of social justice issues. So we had panels of students discussing issues. We also had students presenting research that they had conducted on these issues.
Do you have any examples?
Well, there was a panel run majority by Morehouse students earlier today concerning the Black Lives Matter movement. There was a critical analysis by Clark Atlanta students concerning the literary work of Martin Luther King. Where do we go from here, chaos or community? We also saw students grapple with other issues like homophobia, colorism within the black community, etc., in both their research projects and in student organized panels and debates.
That's fantastic. It seems to cover the gamut of polemics
It
that
does.
we are grappling with as a society. But after you sort of deal with that and share a meeting of the mind, so to speak, are there sort of solutions or are there strategies that come out of it that will end up allowing you as leaders, scholastic leaders, to help our communities?
I would say so, because one of the virtues of being in the honors program is you're always going to get highly involved students. So, for example, I'm on the Morehouse Student Government Administration, and so some of the stuff that I glean here can help me work with my colleagues back at Morehouse to make sure that we are creating solutions, we're working in our community, and that we're having lasting effects outside of the bubble of this conference.
That's fantastic. It seems like when you think about social justice, on one side of the balancing beam you have issues, the other side you have civics and participation.
Right.
And we know that across the nation, civics and government, our understanding of it is kind of poor when it comes to students and the
That's correct.
testing. Do you have any sort of comments about that?
I think that when we look at the apathy that comes across our nation, I think it's largely because of the disconnect between, the intellectuals that you see speculating about possible solutions and the people who are actually involved. So when you get people who can follow that course of thought of creating solutions for demographics and people who are, suffering in this nation are not getting the true effect of the American dream versus the people who are actually implementing that, there's not enough crossover. And so I think one of the good things here is that there is a large amount of crossover.
Is there a practicum that comes out where, you would have recommendations for the average young person? Because young people do study civics.
Correct.
And the electoral process, government, and the rest of it. What goes wrong in between that and actual participation?
I think it's the follow-through. I think that not enough people are used to the fact that when it comes to civic participation, exercising your rights, sometimes it will be a bit of a challenge. There are some processes that seem kind of convoluted, in terms of registering to vote for some instances or just working with city politics. But I think if you can take the kind of mindset of making sure that you don't give up too easy, that you can actually see a lot of follow-through in terms of implementation of solutions.
The Student Empowerment Program is involved with virtual aspects. One of the properties is actual digitaldemocracyusa.com and the hashtag for it. And I guess in 2008, when President Obama was elected, we thought that we would sort of inherit a digital democracy. And since we don't have that, how could we attract the young scholars like yourself to help develop a practicum for that?
Well, I think
today?
it's more so relating the issues back to them, because oftentimes youth feel as though they're not being affected by politics and that politicians aren't reaching out to them effectively. So I think that by framing issues of today, for example, climate change, poverty, demographics, preventing gentrification in our communities, etc. If we can relate this back to young people by framing it as something that they're going to inherit as a generation, then they'll truly see it as incumbent upon them to make sure they're educated about these issues and to make sure that they're able to actually affect change.
But wait a minute, you're a Morehouse man.
Yes, sir.
And you already know that you inherit leadership.
Correct.
From Benjamin Mays to Dr. Tobey Johnson and so many others. So because of that inheritance, you're an international studies major also?
I'm an international studies minor.
Wow. So what are you going to do with your particular major and minor?
Ideally, I'm getting the business expertise now because I want to get a dual JD MBA in graduate school, and then eventually work in some field of law, whether it be just criminal litigation or corporate law and litigation, and then kind of use that change to maybe shift into politics to where I can, effectively represent people in my community.
That's awesome. If you were talking directly, and you are, to high school students across the nation that may not be honor students or but would like to be, what would you say to them?
I would say that being an honor student, a lot of the honor students that we see here, it's not dependent on some, concrete measure of intellect or some score that you get on a test. It's just the people who are willing to work harder than the next guy. So all throughout high school, those 4 years that you have there, you pretty much just make sure that you are always going to be working harder than the person you see next to you. If you see somebody who's doing better than you in a subject, don't see that as some aspect for competition, but rather befriend that person, find out what they're doing well and how you can become better by learning from what they're doing well. I think that by having an open mind and by consistently trying to glean knowledge from the subjects that you're learning rather than just getting a grade is a part of what we call at this conference an honors mindset. So as long as you can develop your own honors mindset, you'll be fine.
That's fantastic. Where are you from?
Texas.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Plano Senior High in Plano, Texas.
Who was your favorite teacher?
My favorite teacher would have to be an individual by the name of Mr. Scott Shaw, taught junior year AP US History.
What were the 3 or 5 most important books you ever read?
Biography of Malcolm X by Manning Marable, Steve Jobs' biography by Walter Isaacson, and for a third, I think anything by Michael Eric Dyson, honestly. Any one of his books will qualify for that.
What would you say right now about this conference to your president and Dr. Krake?
I would say thank you for this opportunity. I think that this kind of congregation and meeting of mind is something that's very important, because when it comes to expressing a lot of the intellectual viewpoints that we had here today, it's important to make sure that we don't do that in a silo and that we have a community to help us improve those viewpoints, fine-tune them a little bit, but also to glean knowledge from them and learn from other people's experiences.
You're a fantastic young man, and I called you, and I wasn't joking. I said, Mr. President, and I do believe that it will require the mettle and the poise and the countenance and the love of people that you already have.
Thank you.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you very much.
So long.